I've watched every episode of The Big Show Show, so you don't have to. Don't know whether you've seen, but there's wrestling on Netflix now, like the WWF stuff from in the past. It's live every week now, and The Rock's on it, and Hulk Hogan's a baddie. In truth, wrestling has been on Netflix for a little while now in different forms, like that brilliant resurrection of Jake the Snake Roberts documentary from a few years ago. That was really good. Or Wrestlers, the series that chronicles a wrestling company and Al Snow's mental breakdown over running said wrestling company. Even before they moved their weekly wristlock roundups into the streaming world, WWE had tag-teamed with the Tudum people on a handful of projects. There was the wrestling movie The Main Event, starring Keith Lee, which was stupendously bad. And there was a Choose Your Own Adventure, in which you played the New Day, sneaking into The Undertaker's smoky house. Of all the things that Escape the Undertaker gave us, such as a death trap dungeon of delights and the return of the urn as wrestling canon, it was this footage of The Undertaker eating a bacon sandwich that was low-key, for me, the best part. Rest in peace. Blob, 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 blob. Today we're here to talk about WWE's 2020 foray into situation comedy with Netflix exclusive The Big Show Show, starring everybody's favourite baldy, badly booked giant, The Big Show. Now, admittedly, some of Paul White's WWE moments were already sitcom-worthy, getting explosive diarrhea after eating laxative-laced burritos, cosplaying as a barbarian, a baby, and a racist, and surfing on the coffin of his recently passed father. You know, laugh-a-minute stuff. However, the actual Big Show Show, created by writers Josh Bicel and Jason Berger, tells the story of Paul White hanging up the boots and taking on the greatest fight of his life, being a good husband and raising his 3 daughters. Facing The Undertaker in a Punjabi prison match could never prepare him for the wrath of, his wife after he forgets to take the bins out. Big Show's won plenty of handicap matches in the past, but how will he fare against his trio of daughter temper tantrums? You get the gist. Hilarious consequences abound. Big Show has pestered WWE for years to get his own family sitcom, but there just wasn't the resources or the desire from WWE to make one in-house. I mean, Show got to show off his acting chops in a WWE film, and he was in some cameos outside the company on television, but a family situation comedy was his holy grail, his Shangri-La, if you will. When the initial Netflix partnership came about, the one that gave us that awful Keith Lee-led movie and The Undertaker eating a sandwich, it was Vince McMahon who went to bat for The Big Show with the Netflix execs to bring his dream to life. And with that, The Big Show Show was finally born. Now, I'd like to point out before we go any further that myself and my younger brother Mike actually first came up with a sitcom called The Big Show Show in 1999, with episodes played out using my brother's extensive selection of WWF action figures and my old toy box. And had the Netflix version been set in Castle Grayskull and included Hardcore Holly as a psychopathic next-door neighbour, Steve Austin as a needlessly aggressive landlord, and a Lego pet dog named Beef, then chances are we'd have already sued the Tudum right out of all those people. As a premise, it's a very sweet one. The Netflix show, not mine and my brother's. Wholesome family man Big Show adjusting to life amongst us muggles. They made 1 season and 1 crossover special. And I've watched them all. I sat here and I watched them all. One by bloody one. How does large Paul Donald White II fare in a fictional life away from a fictional sport? More importantly, is this studio audience sitcom endeavour actually any good? You may argue, well, they only made 1 series, so clearly it's rubbish. But I'll have you know, they only ever made 12 episodes of Fawlty Towers, and it's considered one of the greatest sitcoms of all time. At the risk of spoilers, I predict this is probably going to be the last time I compare The Big Show Show to Fawlty Towers, just in case John Cleese sends the sitcom gods to smite me. I have questions I want to answer whilst I'm watching this show. With Big Show as the show's main attraction, it's bound to catch the eyes of wrestling fans. But how many wrestling-based morsels will they get to snack on in this mainstream family sitcom? Plus, As with all comedies of this ilk, it leans heavily on canned laughter, punctuating points where we, as viewers, are meant to throw our heads back and laugh heartily. How many of these canned laughter cues will actually bring about an organic lull from my mouth? So, throughout my watch-along of The Big Show Show, I'm going to keep track of all the wrestling references that pop up to see how much they lean into the Grap's backstory of Paul White. I'm also going to track every use of canned laughter in every episode. I'm going to add every genuine laugh that I got from each episode and compare the numbers. Now, I'm going to try to not be as cynical and snarky as I may have sounded in this intro. I'm going to be open-minded. I'm going to be game for a laugh. But obviously, if you think I've been unfair, you can feverishly defend The Big Show Show in the comments down below. I can't put this off any longer. Let's binge watch The Big Show Show. The first episode is called Prototype. Is John Cena in it? Is that our first wrestling reference? We'll have to put a pin in that one and find out. The episode begins with Lola White, the daughter from the Big Show's storyline First Marriage, on a solo flight to Tampa, where she's going to live with our boy Paul and his current family. It's explained later in the show that Lola's mom got offered a high-profile job in Brussels, presumably working for either a waffle company or the European Union. She tells the woman next to her on her flight that her dad is a retired entertainer, to which the lass says, "Oh, like Celine Dion," to which we get a quick sizzle reel of the Big Show's WWE career and a blast of his theme song before Lola compares her dad to Celine Dion if she ate a whole buffet of Celine Dion's. That's a wrestling reference, and that's a lot of canned laughter. Cut to the Big Show's home, where our boy, Mr. Show, is trying and hilariously failing to French braid his youngest daughter, JJ's hair. "I used to braid Mick Foley's hair all the time, and he loved it," said Big Show, to which his youngest daughter asked him to stop comparing her to Mick Foley. I presume in a later episode, we'll see her in an exploding barbed wire death match against Abdullah the Butcher. Enter the beautiful sitcom wife, estate agent Cassie White, who's gone and got herself banned from Starbucks for trying to run through a drive-thru. Oh, classic Cassie. She can't come to the airport to pick up Big Show's daughter, but placates him that everything will be all right by giving him a kiss on the forehead, which she has to climb a little ladder to do, which leads to a big old bit of canned laughter, because you see, the joke is that Big Show is very tall and his wife isn't. Anyway, Cassie's buzzing about the possibility of selling a house, a spooky haunted house, that could lead her to getting her face on benches around the city, like all high-ranking estate agents do. Paul White is not a fan of that because people sit on his face all day when he's on a bench. It's ADB, says Show, all day butts. You know when a joke is rough, when they also need the characters in the sitcom to laugh, as well as the canned laughter. Enter Mandy, the soon-to-become middle child, who is struggling with the idea of becoming lost in the shuffle. Show tells her to stop being dramatic, to which she declares, "I'm not dramatic, tell me I'm not dramatic, or I will run away from home." Don't worry, Daddy Show knows how to cheer up Mandy, with a classic bit of family fun in a bit that they call Giant JJ. This is where the youngest daughter goes on Paul White's shoulders wearing a big coat and pretends to be a giant monster and chases everybody around the house. The title card hits here, and I secretly hope that the Big Show is just Giant JJ for the rest of the show. Alas, when we come back, he's boring old Big Show again, and he and Cassie need to tell dramatic middle kid Mandy that she needs to give up her room for Lola to move into. Both are too scared to tell Mandy, and the cold stare that she gives Big Show when he delivers the news delivers the kind of emotional damage that Big Boss Man wishes he could have given Paul White in the late 90s. At this point, I catch myself pondering whether Big Show's coffin riding shenanigans with the Big Boss Man is canon. But I can't ponder such things too long because Big Show is now en route to the airport and realises that JJ has snuck into the car underneath all the balloons that Show has bought for Lola. Daddy Show is angry, but JJ bringing a confetti cannon calms him down. See, if you ever need to win Big Show over, this is the key, a confetti cannon. Sorry I ran over your dog, Big Show, but here's a confetti cannon. Show and JJ meet a police officer who's both a huge fan and mistakes the Big Show for John Cena. this guy would get roasted on Reddit if he was a real fan. We get a glimpse into the policeman's personal peccadillos as he asks Big Show to hold him like a baby, something that Show goes along with, just as his daughter gets off the plane. What a circumstance to greet your daughter in. JJ fires the confetti cannon, which is deemed worthy of canned laughter, because clearly the writers bloody love themselves a confetti cannon. I mean, to be fair, who doesn't? It hasn't started well for Lola White in Tampa because her bags have been lost on the plane and she doesn't have a room of her own, as Mandy has organised a sit-in protest to stop Lola getting her room. Now, I'm kind of with Mandy to some extent, because the decision for Lola to move in with them wasn't overnight. This is something that's been meticulously planned. So why did Mr. and Mrs. Show only broach the subject of her moving out as Lola was on her way? Mandy live streams her bedroom bedsit like a modern day John and Yoko, and Lola is forced to sleep in the same room as the littlest Show, JJ, who sleepwalks, sleep talks, and sleep sings in Italian. We see this in a flashback with JJ following up saying, I don't even know Italian. That got a genuine lol from me. That got a genuine laugh. To make matters worse, it turns out that the women's ice hockey team that Lola was so excited to try out for doesn't exist. Just a boys' one in that school. And Paul forgot to double check. Doi. The episode features some quiet moments as well, where Lola is texting her mum, explaining how bad things are and that she misses her, which gives the show a bit of soul outside of that constant laughter track. But bless our big boy Big, feeling the guilt of not being around in Lola's life for so long due to the ludicrous schedule he worked during the McMahon era, he goes above and beyond to try and fix things, despite both Lola and Cassie telling him to leave it well alone. It leads to a scene with Big Show and the school PE teacher, an alleged former military man with little man syndrome, who refuses to start an ice girls hockey team. He's one of my favourite characters, actually. Meeting Big Show for the first time, guesstimating his height as 5'8", constantly referring to Big Show as Big Gulp, and generally trying to make himself look as big as possible. He ends up upsetting Show, who goes big nasty and ends up hanging the coach on a hook in the wall of his office. Lola is livid, but she gets to try out for the men's team. So in a way, Show's meddling, which she didn't want him to do, kind of worked. Now, the B plot of this episode is around Mandy's sit-in, which is drawing large crowds of kids after JJ shared it on the Big Show's Twitter. JJ is also selling tickets for $20 a time, the little scamp. Mandy, JJ and Lola all share a moment on the roof, which JJ arrives on via a zipline, refusing to divulge where she'd come from, which also made me chuckle. Mandy says the sit-in has got out of hand, but she can't back down to Mum and Dad. Lola agrees to help get the rents to cave in if she can have the room after. This eliminates the whole point of the sit-in, though, it seems. Cue all the sisters from the same mister hugging it out for some wholesomeness, etc. Bless. Back to the A plot, and Lola gets her ice hockey tryout. As she predicted, all the guys go soft on her because she's a girl. Big Show has one more idea up his sleeve, and he goads his daughter into checking him on the ice. He accuses her of being too scared to do it, and she retaliates by putting him on his ass on the ice, a rare bump by the Big Show. The ice hockey lads and the coach love it, and she ends up making the team. Another young talent getting over thanks to the Big Show. Even in retirement, the guys give him back. The parents cave in to the sit-in without Lola's help, and Big Show takes great pleasure in cutting a screamy promo on all the random children in Mandy's room and scaring them off. Lola gets sent bags from the airport, but they turn out to be somebody else's bags. Big Show says that sometimes we get the bags we need rather than the bags we want. When asked what he means, Show says, I don't know, I was just trying to help. Okay, all right, I'll admit, that got a laugh out of me. The episode ends with the family settling down for dinner and a movie. We see Lola join them last, responding to a message from her mum, saying that things in this wacky sitcom family are gonna work out just fine. All friends in the end. I counted 3 wrestling references in the first episode. The montage of Big Show bits at the start, Paul talking about braiding Mick Foley's hair, and the alleged superfan of wrestling, the police officer mistaking Big Show for John Cena. I'd say those count as 3 beefy wrestling references in episode 1. But what about the comedy in my situation comedy? So, in episode 1, they hit play on the candle after, get this, 164 times. I can tell you, there was not 164 genuine lols in this show. I got 3 tops. One line I didn't mention earlier came from Cassie, Big Show's wife. While she was shaving Big Show's baldy head, she was talking about the haunted house she was trying to sell. And she said, I found an exorcist on Craigslist. Turned out to be a personal trainer who didn't know how to spell. I like that. That's my vibe, that humour. That and most of what the PE teacher did, it was very funny, but it didn't come near 160 odd laughs, I'm afraid. Sorry about that. Right, episode 2. It's called The Big Punisher. After a family presentation for Lola on the pros and cons of living in Tampa, or as Lola calls it, a giant humid Arby's, Big Show suffers from a mental crisis after speaking at JJ's career day, realizing that he doesn't have a purpose anymore now that he's retired. Instead of doing what any self-respecting retired wrestler does and start a podcast with Conrad Thompson, he's encouraged by the guy who runs his local gym, his mate Terry, to copy The Undertaker and his wife and join Mrs. Show in the world of real estate. Right, gotta pause here because the gym guy, by the way, Terry, is played by actual sitcom royalty, Jaleel White, aka Steve Urkel from Family Matters. Did I do that? You certainly did, you lovable geek, you. Now, this may also be the only time I get to say this in a Cultaholic video, so I will. The guy who played Steve Urkel also played Sonic the Hedgehog in both the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon and the darker cartoon that us superfans call Sat AM Sonic. Oh, and Sonic Underground too, but we don't talk about that one. Anyway, shut up, Tom. Talk about the wrestling sitcom. Whilst that's going on, JJ gets a bollocking from The Punisher, which is Cassie, wearing a black hat, for staying up late watching The Walking Dead. It's driving the middle one, Mandy, mad, who's now moved in with her to give Lola her own space. But good egg new girl Lola invites Mandy to move in with her. And you guessed it, there are hilarious results. Mandy is messy, noisy, generally weird to room with, as Lola finds out. It leads to the two getting into a fight at school where Mandy takes Lola's bomber jacket without asking. And as they brawl in the corridor over the jacket, the PE teacher gets clattered in the nose. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. After a dreadful attempt at real estating alongside his wife and her assistant Bennett, more on him later, which leads to him destroying the curtain rail and the banister of the haunted house that Cassie's trying to sell, our pal Show attempts to find his purpose as the strict parent, donning the Punisher black cap and attempting to discipline Mandy and Lola for their fight. But making them just sit quietly on their iPads doesn't class as punishment apparently, and they're still livid with each other. Mrs. Punisher steps in to ground them and turn off the Wi-Fi. Some proper 21st century parental punishment. No WWE Network to fact check all the wrestling stuff that your dad claims he did. Haha, no. Actually, that's the same for everybody because they turned off the network. Big Paul and JJ return to the haunted house to fix all the things that Paul broke, but are spooked out by the sound of noises in the empty, potentially haunted house. They hide in the cupboard, and it turns out that Mandy, who said that she was in the office all day, was there with her colleagues. She lied to her husband because she didn't want to work with him anymore. He was a liability, which I get. It wraps up the real estate story arc, and it gives us a genuine lull when Big Show and JJ are hiding in the closet for what they believe to be the ghost of the old lady that lived there, and JJ bellows, I don't want to die in a closet, I want to die punching a shark. That's a very funny line. Back home, under the threat of taking his socks off in their company, Big Show convinces his daughters to talk and hash out their issues, deciding they need to establish some ground rules if they're going to share a room. Paul suggests the most WWE thing ever, a contract signing. The next scene sees a blue table set up in the middle of the living room, and JJ introducing Lola and Mandy to the table. Now at this point I wrote in my notes, somebody better get powerbombed through that table, or what's the point? As I press play again, Paul White says, and I quote, I still think to make this contract signing official, one of you needs to get powerbombed through the table. I'm not sure if this program has become meta really quick, or if I've sunk to the program's level. Sadly, no violence, just decency. Boo! The Wi-Fi gets turned back on, and everybody is all pals at the palace, to quote my nanny Doris, and the episode ends. Big Show said in an interview that this was actually one of his favourite episodes to do, praising working with Jaleel White, which is nice to hear. Was it one of our favourites though? Well, they opened up the can of laughter 157 times in episode 2 of the Big Show show. From this came 4 genuine laughs and at least 1 light chuckle. We got 6 wrestling references scattered throughout. At one point, Big Show references breaking Macho Man's shin. I'm not sure that happened, but I know Randy's knees were buggered by the end of his career, God love him. Also, Show mentions that he had over 3,000 hardcore matches and one with a live bear. Whilst the hardcore match value is exaggerated, which is a bad habit in writing. I've said this a million times before. The live bear match is kinda true. It references a scene in Big Show's WWE Films flop, Knucklehead, in which Paul White does indeed wrestle a live bear. It's a reference that if you got it immediately, you're either a full-time wrestling content creator or you need to make better life choices. Or both. We'll talk about that again in a bit, shall we? Right, here we go. Episode 3. The Big Brain. I doubt Bobby Heenan's getting a run out here. We open with Big Show and Steve Urkel / Sonic the Hedgehog / Terry fitting an alligator protection device that backfires, leaving Paul and Terry getting pepper sprayed and tranquilizer darted like it's SmackDown in 04. It turns out JJ, the littlest, is a certified genius, according to a test that she took at school, and is being put in the smart kid class. JJ is not having it though. She eventually caves, or seems to, but instead uses a voice changer to pretend to be her dad and bunks off school. When she's caught, we get a sweet moment where she reveals that she's scared of being around the smart kids. And then Big Show reveals that he's got a fear of mascots, which I guess is why WCW binned off Wildcat Willie. And the two pinky promise to face their respective fears. If JJ goes to smart school, then the Big Show will take the family to the kingdom of the mascots, Disney World. JJ later tries to help her dad get over his mascot fear with an intervention. She brings Terry over in a mascot outfit, which he immediately regrets because he gets punched in the face with Big Show's old WMD knockout punch. Meanwhile, Mandy is running for lower school president against another kid in her class who happens to be named Taylor Swift, not that one. She decides the only way to compete against his popularity is to force him to drop out of the race. However, it's not as successful as she hoped. We get a C-plot in this episode of Cassie, desperate for Lola to like her and be Bezzy mates. They go to a concert together to watch one of those trendy AI viral stars. And they plan on getting matching tattoos as well. However, just as Cassie is about to get her ink done with her stepdaughter, she stops, saying that she actually needs to be her stepmother more than her friend. Lola agrees, they hug it out, and even the tough tattoo guy sheds a tear as well. See, that's the joke, because he's quite rough looking, but he's emotional. The episode ends with Mandy declaring war on Taylor Swift, not that one. And JJ and her new clever friends from the smart class planning a heist at the candy factory. We eased back on all fronts here with my statistics. Just 135 recorded canned laughter moments, which equated to 2 genuine LOLs and possibly 2 wrestling references. One was the KO punch, which was Big Show's finisher back in today. And I think they snuck a second in under our noses. JJ goes to her first date in smart school in stonewashed blue jeans and a black turtleneck, announcing her arrival into the kitchen before school by saying, "What's up, jabronis?" It's played off as JJ looking like Steve Jobs. This has got to be a nod to The Rock, that meme picture of The Rock, you know the one. It's got to be that, surely. Episode 4, The Big Sinkhole. Won't lie, I'm getting tired now. And we've not even hit the halfway point yet. I'd love a sinkhole at this point. That would be smashing. That would be smashing. Big Show was getting ready to go on the cookery segment of the local TV show. And Cassie was about to finally sell that spiritually adjacent haunted house when disaster struck and a sinkhole opens up by the kids' school, causing the school to be cancelled for the day, and suddenly a child-minding issue to do the proverbial run-in. Mandy stays home to strategize her lower school presidential campaign, JJ goes to Cassie's office, and Lola goes with her dad to the TV station. Mandy is the subject of a smear campaign during the presidential race, so she decides to fight fire with fire by digging up dirt on Taylor Swift using a secretive deep throat operative within the school called The Wolf. And it turns out that Taylor Swift's real name is Cliff Swift. She reveals this to the world and immediately regrets her heel turn. It leads to Taylor Swift coming around to apologise for getting dirty, and then kisses her, and she kisses him back, which gets an ooh from that canned laughter machine. We got a bit of romance on the Big Show show. Bless them. Meanwhile, Big Show's TV appearance is a mother-flipping disaster. He and Lola argue over whether or not you add Greek yogurt to a hot dog and tater tot casserole. We had the same argument the other night, me and the wife. They burn the dish and accidentally throw it all over the TV host. It'll be on a future episode of It'll Be Alright on the Night, I bet, which is what us oldies use to describe YouTube videos called TV Fails Try Not to Laugh Challenge. This leads to a cook-off between the two to prove who the best chef is. It gets too competitive and leads to Big Show getting cream in the face and Lola getting a pie in the mouth. They laugh, they reconcile, and we get a sentimental moment where Big Show explains how the tater tot casserole was a slice of her childhood that he wanted to keep sacred. That's why he was all weird about it. Oh, lovely, it's so beautiful. Cassie is close to landing a promotion, and JJ is her secret weapon, using her cuteness to try and flog the spooky house, which actually works. However, she doesn't tell the house buyers that the house may be haunted, and her assistant, the sneaky smarmy Bennett, tattles on her to his dad, the boss of the company. Benny gets a promotion and Cassie gets fired. Do we think there's some ethical issues about firing somebody over a potential house haunting? I haven't got that far into Luigi's Mansion to be perfectly sure, so I'll leave that with you. We end the episode with everybody sitting down to have a Chinese takeaway and Big Show reassuring his family that everything and everybody will be fine. And then Mandy confesses her love for Taylor Swift as JJ shouts, "Best sinkhole day ever!" to end this episode of The Big Show Show. An episode that had no wrestling references this week, with the exception of Lola suggesting she and her dad settled their cooking disagreements in the ring. That was a fleeting mention. We did get a Netflix crossover when JJ goes to Cassie's office and admires the 11 from Stranger Things Funko Pop on one of the desks. It actually got one proper laugh from me in this show, and it was once again from JJ, when she revealed near the end of the episode that she'd swiped everybody's keys from her mum's office after her mum got sacked. And it leads to this bit where JJ just keeps pulling car keys from her different pockets. It gets what looks like a genuine laugh from Cassie, and I think I enjoyed it all the more seeing her genuine laughter too. They're easing up on the canned laughter at this point. Maybe they're running out. We had 111 plays throughout this episode. We're down on previous episodes when it comes to canned laughter, so maybe they are running out of it. Taking a breather here, let's talk about Paul White the thespian, shall we? Because the Big Show isn't his first performance by any stretch. His movie debut was in Reggie's Prayer, the story of football standout Reggie Knox befriending a troubled student and saving him from the wrong side of the tracks. Paul White plays a whispery, gun-toting, drug-dealing wrong'un who kidnaps said student and beats the bejesus out of Reggie Knox with a plank of wood. Reggie gets his revenge in the rematch in the woods though. His next major role will be in Adam Sandler's movie The Waterboy as wrestling hero Captain Insano, in which he cuts a shouty 80s promo and insults Bobby Boucher. It's a character that sits deep and low on the Big Show iceberg, one that has been teased at being reprised at some point during his time in AEW. Another standout celluloid moment for our Paul was once more as hired muscle, in which he got to throw around Arnold Schwarzenegger in Jingle All the Way, whilst dressed as Father Christmas. Apparently, Arnie slapped him in the balls on set. weird kind of rites of passage thing. They've been mates ever since, apparently, so I don't know much about the Hollywood thing. These roles, along with numerous appearances in TV shows like Star Trek Enterprise, where he played an Orion slave trader who ends up fighting, and Happy on Netflix, where he plays a very sensitive prison inmate who ends up fighting, all helps build Paul White's rep with the movie world lovies. Whenever you watch behind-the-scenes documentaries on TV shows that The Big Show has worked on, people always talk about how lovely he is to work with. So it's not hard to see why it was a no-brainer for Netflix to agree to build something for him that showcased what a lovely bloke he can be. WWE certainly knew that when they cast him in their original movie Knucklehead, in which Paul White plays a gentle orphanage-raised giant on a road trip training to be a ruthless bare-knuckle fighter. This is the film where he has the fight with the bear. The film's pretty rotten, very predictable, packed with movie cliches, but Big Show comes across well and likeable, and it's more experience for that acting resume. Experience that he's putting to the test in his first situation comedy. Right, back to it. Episode 5 is The Big Process. It introduces us to both episode plots in one big hot bowl of exposition gruel. Cassie is going through her own personal process of emotions after losing her job, and Lola is going on a date with a boy when Big Daddy Big Show finds out about her boy, Greg Turbo, which is almost definitely an unused NXT name. He attempts to intimidate him by ripping a phone book in front of him. He does this whilst wearing the WWE Championship that he won from Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series 2002. He used to just carry it over his shoulder. He's now wearing it. It looks very uncomfortable. Sadly, it isn't complemented by his attire from that title reign, a suit, a colour that would depict iron deficiency on the Bristol stool chart. Turns out Greg Turbo is a wrestling geek, and he encourages Lola to let his dad go on the date with them to a pirate-themed escape room. And Greg is too starstruck by Big Show to commit to the date with Lola. Eventually, they bollocks up the escape room, and Big Show just shoulder blocks his way out, smashing the door to end the experience. The assistant reveals it's the 7th door they've had smashed this week, commenting, "Tampa has too many wrestlers." Imagine how they feel at A Harrowing Escape, which is the escape room 10 minutes from the WWE Performance Center. They must get their back door smashed in all the time. Meanwhile, our Cassie is busying herself with going through her process of emotions, making JJ School Hamster Instagram famous, watching Queer Eye, building weird IKEA furniture, watching Queer Eye, and badly doing Mandy's hair whilst watching Queer Eye, all in an attempt to push down how she's feeling about being woefully unemployed. JJ and Mandy attempt an intervention to push through some of the steps of this process by pretending that their mama has lost the class hamster, but it backfires and leaves her utterly miserable and broken playing the guitar on the roof. Huzzah! So anyway, back to the other plot. Big Show loves Greg Turbo. And just as Greg and Lola are about to kiss, Big Show rocks up in the kitchen and gives Greg a piece of classic WWF merch, a Big Show t-shirt with Show's circa 1999 headshot on it. You know, back when he looked like UK comedian and musician Bill Bailey. This ruins the mood for that first kiss. I mean, who would want to kiss somebody when they're wearing a t-shirt with Big Show's face on it? He'd have been better off with one of those big all-over t-shirts that they used to sell for him. When Lola finds out Greg and her dad have been texting each other, she breaks up with Greg, but catches her dad sneaking in after hanging out with Greg. Bit weird. Lola demands Big Show break up with him, and heartbreakingly, he does. We wrap up the Cassie arc with a special Netflix special guest crossover, special moment special, when JJ uses Big Show's Twitter to get Queer Eye's Tan France to visit the house and give Cassie a makeover. It brings her back to normal and is genuinely the only part of the show that got a real reaction out of me. I mean, me and the wife love Queer Eye. We went to see Jonathan Van Ness in Manchester in 2022 when he was doing his live tour. Here's Alex and JVC hugging in the pouring rain. Arguably the most important part of the year for her, just pipped to the post by our engagement a few months later. Big Show also reveals that he's got Cassie her own bench like good real estate agents have, saying that instead of going back to work for a real estate firm, she should become self-employed and do it on her own. She's up for it, but hates the picture that Big Show used of her on the bench, and he removes it by pulling the bench out of the ground, presumably fly tipping it somewhere off I-95. I clocked 4 wrestling references in this one, building that number back up slowly but surely. One included Big Show recalling a time that The Undertaker delivered a baby at the Superdome. Sadly, that didn't happen, since the first time Undertaker wrestled at the Superdome was in a losing effort to Brock Lesnar, I believe. The only thing that was born with The Undertaker that particular night was a really bad concussion. This episode had more canned laughter than any other episode so far, clocking in at 169 nice instances of rent-a-chuckle. Organic laughter from me, sadly, wasn't as forthcoming. Maybe a titter at the Big Show's t-shirts, that's about it. Some oohs though, mainly from the 2 surprise cameos of Tan France and the undisputed WWE title from 2002. One being a beloved, often underappreciated centerpiece from a TV show, the other being the undisputed WWE title from 2002. Episode 6 is the big party. You noticed all but one of the eps have the big at the start. How do they do it? These crazy Hollywood types. If you're worried about the lack of wrestling references, I think you're going to put those worries through the Spanish announce table, because Big Show and Cassie are off on a cruise. Not just any cruise, nah. A WWE cruise, not to be confused with Chris Jericho's Rock and Rager, where they sometimes tape Dynamite and Chris Jericho falls out with MVP. Now, I'm going to guess before we get into this episode that we hit double digits for the wrestling references for the very first time. Maybe. This WWE cruise happens on the same day as Cassie and Paul's anniversary. They get on the cruise and Big Show's got some big romantic plans. But Cassie gets an offer on that infamous haunted house, so she rushes to the top deck to call the broker, leaving Show to put all his romantic plans on hold. Here to keep him company is our first wrestling cameo, Mark Henry. He ends up taking Cassie's place in the couple's massage. The cameos continue with Rikishi and Mick Foley. They help Big Show and Mark Henry eat the anniversary seafood tower that he'd ordered. Big Show is furious with Cassie when she eventually comes back for working on their anniversary. But Cassie said before they left it was going to be a bad idea, and she ends up storming out. But don't worry, Big Show's got a plan. He gets Mark Henry, Mick Foley and Rikishi to sing I Want It That Way by the Backstreet Boys to her. You see, these three, they can hold a note. They can squeeze the life out of a note in a headlock to death. Halfway through their wretched rendition, Cassie finds out that she has sold the infernal haunted house, seemingly closing one of the show's longest running story arcs. Thank goodness. The girls back home, meanwhile, are throwing a bloody party whilst the rents are away as a way of helping Mandy's political campaign. Her political rival, Taylor Swift, not that one, shows up and offers to drop out of the election so they can be together as a couple properly. The party ends up becoming a nerdy political food fight, which only stops when Taylor and Mandy reveal that they are dating. The house is all tidied up just in time for the parents to return. They don't suspect a thing. Or do they? You see, Daddy Big Show hid a camera on his undisputed WWE title and saw the whole thing. Punishments all round, and one more big press of the canned laughter button for the night. This is another of Big Show's favourite episodes because he got to work with his mates, who wouldn't be buzzing to do that. He praised Mark Henry in particular, whom the cast and crew totally fell in love with, suggesting that if they loved him anymore, the second series would be called The Mark Henry Show. So I love the idea of Mark Henry just strong-arming Show out of the family and taking over as patriarch, obviously in a salmon suit. Rikishi, Mick Foley, Mark Henry, and the undisputed WWE title were the only wrestling references. The wrestlers themselves were the only references. None of them talk about wrestling either. I feel like more fun could have been had with the wrestling element of the WWE cruise, but alas, that ship has quite literally sailed. We had a slender 133 canned laughter plays here. Laughs from me came from pretty much anything Mark Henry said. He's just naturally lovely. I kind of get where the crew are coming from, to be honest. But why do we have canned laughter in sitcoms like this? Well, It was born as a result of live entertainment giving way to the rise of the wireless. Program makers wanted to give folks who gather around the radio the experience of being there live. It was first pioneered on the Bing Crosby radio show, and when TV arrived, the single-camera sitcom, in which scenes were shot multiple times, led to an inconsistent laugh track from the studio audience. So it was CBS sound engineer Charlie Douglas who created an audience response duplicator known as a laugh box to place the desired level of lull after each joke. It was when the Big Show came out that WWE were actually using audience response duplicators. You see, the show launched during the pandemic, and WWE emanated from the Thunderdome at that point, in which cheers and boos were piped in, giving us this weird, cold, awkward feeling to the wrestling. Mainly because we were being told directly who to cheer and boo for. Also, mainly because it was the pandemic and just about everything at that point was weird. The Big Bang Theory was the last mainstream sitcom to use the laugh track, with the demise down to a more creative push for comedy and, according to one ex-sitcom showrunner, people who just don't like being told how to react anymore. Despite this, Netflix seemed to make it a mission to bring back the canned old days with a ream of shows in the classic sitcom style. One of those is the one we're talking about today, The Big Show, which I guess we should get back to. The penultimate episode of this season is The Big Surprise, and it features, get this, a big surprise. Big Show arranges for Lola's friend from back home to come visit. They have a lovely catch-up, and it leads to her friend inviting her to move in with her back in Minnesota, which JJ isn't happy about at all, bless her. She'd miss her big sister. She convinces her mum to help her make a video to convince Lola to stay. When she asks Lola to watch it, it turns out to be a very sweet video where JJ records messages for all of Lola's key life events, like her 21st birthday and moving to Mars. After all that, Lola decides to stay and be a brilliant big sister. Hugs all around and ahs all over. It's the closest this show has genuinely given me to a little lump in my throat. Genuine human emotion, the lull of the limbic system. Meanwhile, the lower school election rumbles on. A story as long-winded as that haunted house arc we've just got done with. And Mandy and Taylor agree to run a friendly campaign since they're now dating. It leads to a very boring debate where they just agree with everything. And who wants that in politics? This is broken up by the Big Show comically trying to find his seat with his wife. You see, the joke is, he's very big. Taylor goes wild and pitches replacing the salad bar with a candy bar. Mandy cannot abide this. They very publicly break up there and then during the discussion. Despite this, Mandy is elected lower class president, but she's devastated that it cost her her relationship with Taylor Swift. Not that one. Our boy Big Show gets a surprise of his own when his wacky friend and gym owner Terry, Steve Urkel / Sonic the Hedgehog, turns an autograph signing into a wrestling contest in which if people survive one round with Big Paul, they get a free gym membership for an entire year. He batters everyone, including a guy in an NWO t-shirt, although it wouldn't shock me if that was an actual member of the NWO. There were loads of them back in the day. And a guy in a Rey Mysterio mask who is terrified by the whole thing. It ignites a fire in the Big Show's belly to get back into the wrestling game, and it sees him later that night going through his rejected merch ideas. A hairdryer called the Big Blow, socks called the Big Toe, and a nightlight called the Big Glow. I've come up with a few myself, actually. A Sports Direct size coffee cup called the Big Joe, a device for cutting the grass called the Big Mo, a garden-friendly bug repellent called the Big Show's Bug Repellent Spray. Sorry, I'm 7 episodes in and my brain is frazzled. Big Show ends up having his final match in Terry's gym, and oh my God, he's come to the ring dressed as Big Daddy from World of Sport. There is no way it's an accident. That is a Big Daddy cosplay. Sadly, his final opponent isn't giant haystacks, rather just 2 random dudes who Big Show clatters. He then announces spontaneously to the world that he's going back to WWE. What? Just as Cassie is getting her new business off the ground? Just as the Whites are settled as a family? This is treated as an end of episode cliffhanger. The White ladies front row for that announcement, all stunned into silence at Daddy White's revelation. We got 118 presses of the of canned laughter here, and once again, an empty jar of laughs from me. But I enjoyed the episode more. I like the wrestling stuff, the wholesome sisterly bonding moments, very soul-affirming. But I wonder if it's because I've binged too deep, you know? As I say, loads of wrestling references here, despite a lack of understanding of basic wrestling rules. Nobody's pinning anyone. Just a chokeslam ends matches, apparently. Come on now. It was the most wrestling-y episode so far, and that includes the random WWE cruise that featured a few Hall of Famers eating shrimp and singing Backstreet Boys. But the show had some heart in it, and it left us with a cliffhanger for the first time, and it brings us to our final episode. The big decision. The family are weighing up Big Show's plans to return to the road with WWE. Cassie eventually encourages her husband to go on one final tour and finish with a retirement match. So he does, the selfish prick. We get a scene at the WWE Performance Center where Show is filming a commercial for SmackDown. Terry's tagged along as well, and Big Show's getting homesick. He comes home to find that none of his family actually need him for anything. They're just cracking on. In his absence, Cassie has hired her former assistant Bennett as her new assistant after making him do a bunch of menial tasks to make up for getting her sacked. And Lola's been getting driving lessons from the PE teacher, making a welcome return to the show and going through a hilarious emotional breakup. Oh, and JJ has snuck a dog into the house, something she was told categorically she wasn't allowed to do. Mandy finds out and has a horrible time keeping it a secret, especially when the dog chews Cassie's Jimmy Chews. Bennett rumbles the dog mystery and blackmails the kids into doing the menial chores assigned to him. That is prize scumbag behavior, that is, Bennett. Quite like it. JJ ends up fessing up and dropping Bennett in it, to which Bennett leaves like a thief in the night, never to be seen again. Lola returns after failing her driving test, and she goes off on her dad, Paul White, for buggering off back to wrestling after she moved to be closer to him. And actually, yeah, she is 100% spot on here. I get that Show's family back home are used to him being away, but a big part of the Big Show is that his daughter from his previous relationship could spend time with him. And just as she ups her life to be with him, he goes off again. Cassie promises to calm things down and tells Show, "Go and live your dream," a line that is laced with passive aggressiveness. Back at training, Show is upset with how he left things with the fam. He gets twatted with a steel chair, which knocks him into a dream where he observes what his family would be like without him. Cassie becomes Bennett's agent because Show didn't encourage her, apparently. JJ stays in the stupid class because Show didn't push her to go to the clever class. Mandy becomes Taylor's assistant because she never had Lola around. As for Lola, she never moves to Tampa, and we see her refusing a call from her dad. This breaks Big Show's heart, and when he comes back round from his steel chair-induced coma, he decides to hang up his boots. The kids gather round to watch the wrestling on TV, but Big Show surprises them by returning home. He missed being with them so much, he decides to never go back to WWE. He apologizes to Lola. They have a very teary moment. It's very well done. And the episode ends with Big Show having his final match in the living room with his wife as ring announcer. He screams, "Whose house?" as he enters the living room, stealing Swerve's catchphrase. He faces Mandy and Lola in their wrestling gimmicks, a judge and a hockey player respectively, with a special appearance by JJ as The Little Show, which is JJ in an adorable matching singlet. The dog's the referee, they all hug on the floor. We end in the most wholesome way you could imagine. For our finale, we had 131 canned laughter cuts and another 0 on the genuine lol scale, but I've really grown attached and or worn down by the White family. And there was some smiles in this one as well, I must confess. A fair amount of wrestling references with the Performance Center becoming a set, the use of a steel chair in training to facilitate a montage, the sound of WWE coming through the TV, the Big Show's theme, and a re-recording of the Big Show's theme with JJ singing, "Well, it's the Little Show." This makes JJ the new Def Rebel, which I'm absolutely fine with. So that was the Big Show. Netflix just also played another episode. Oh gosh, we have a new playlist with just one episode on it called The Big Christmas. I did wonder why there was no Christmas special. That seems quite obvious to do. Right. Reset the counters because we are not done yet. Let's do the Big Show Christmas special. The Whites are entering the local Christmas house decoration competition, and it all goes fine until Big Show falls off the roof, the biggest bump of his entire career. It leaves him with his leg and pelvis in casts, which is a weapon in the wrestling world, don't you know, and unable to do all his festive silliness, like dress up as Santa. Cassie offers to be Mrs. Claus this year, but it doesn't go down well. She encourages the kids to ask for ludicrous things for Christmas, getting drunk on the acceptance of the random children, and the parents are left livid at Mrs. Claus for getting the kids' hopes up so high. But she plans to make it right. Let's pop a pin in that and see what JJ's up to. She wants to find where the parents have hidden the Christmas presents. Mandy and Lola are asked to join her, but they want to go hang out with their friends. They agree to do it for a minute or two. Big Show is on to JJ's Prezi heist and instead organises a clue-driven scavenger hunt for the girls, where they can find where the gifts are hidden through a series of clues. We even get a musical montage of the sisters kicking heavy duty booty on the scavenger hunt, whilst Daddy Show is forced to just sit on the sofa for the entire episode. All this sisterly goodness comes undone when JJ leaves the room. Lola and Mandy start talking about how much they've loved spending time with JJ, more than normal because she's normally into dumb kid stuff. JJ overhears that part and runs off upset. Disastrous! If only they knew. Our two story arcs begin falling apart. Cassie confesses to Big Show how she's bollocksed up being Mrs. Claus, but he steps in to save the day. In a wheelchair, dressed as Santa, he encourages the kids to swap their madcap Christmas wishes for one big wish for Santa's leg to get better in time for the big day. Cruel, but I like it. Mandy and Lola find their little sister on the roof and make friends. They get back on the case for the Christmas presents. They send JJ into the air vents to find the final clue. And they get their presents, which were hidden in JJ's room the whole time. Lola gets hockey tickets, Mandy gets something nerdy, and JJ, well, when JJ was asked by her dad what she wanted for Christmas, she said she wanted to spend time with her sisters, which is what she got. Oh my God, it's so sweet I could cry. Oh, she's also getting a hoverboard. JJ, right, along with the PE teacher, have been the MVPs of this series for me. JJ's had the very few real best laughs and some really heartwarming moments throughout as well. I don't really want another series of The Big Show Show. I think my body's ready for the JJ spin-off series. We end the episode with the Whites in matching pajamas, exchanging one gift each before Christmas Eve. Show gets Cassie a steel chair, symbolic of what will happen next year when Mr. and Mrs. Claus team up. Cheapskate, but sure. Mandy and Lola give JJ a calendar with all the Tuesdays crossed out because they're going to spend every Tuesday together in the new year. Ah, cheap, but whatever. It ends with actual snow in Tampa, a CGI Christmas miracle. Big Show checks if the real Christmas miracle is if he can walk, and he nearly falls off the roof again. The silly bastard. Cue a Scar version of We Wish You a Merry Christmas, and we are out. So I counted one festive wrestling reference with that steel chair at the very end, a very festive 120 canned lols, and a festive handful of no's with the JJ stuff. Sadly, Santa didn't bring me any belly laughs, which is it's all I deserve, I guess. So that's the Big Show. Whoa, not done yet. You see, when you search the Big Show Show on Netflix like I did, you get this thing called Game On. It seems like Netflix is hiding episodes of the Big Show around the platform, sprinkling them on the landscape, like Andy Dufresne did with bits of his wall in The Shawshank Redemption. Because inside this folder on Netflix, Christ on a bike, it's another episode of the Big Show Show. Right, so this is a series called Game On, which was described as a Netflix comedy crossover event. Released around the same time as the 2020 Olympics, it contains 4 episodes from 4 Netflix sitcoms, all set around the theme of competition. Paul White's Wacky Family have an episode, as do other Netflix family sitcoms like Family Reunion, starring Tia from Out of Off Sister's Sister, The Expanding Universe of Ashley Garcia, starring Paulina Chavez, and Mr. Iglesias, starring WWE superfan Fluffy. Don't worry, we're not going to watch them all. It's not a crossover in the Avengers Infinity War sense, despite the fact that I'd love for JJ to play Thanos and sacrifice Big Show at Vormir en route to snapping the entire cast of Family Reunion into dust. No, it's 4 episodes with a common theme, but there's a sprinkling of a Big Show crossover in the Mr. Iglesias one, in which Big Show pops up to help Gabe teach some lessons about cheating to his classroom. He throws some people around, he growls at some students. It's pretty much all he does. It's fine. That's all we're going to say about that. We're not going to watch that one. They do have a full ep of the Big Show on here. We need to watch it. It's called The Big Games. Right, reset your bloody candle after counter. Here we go. The family are taking part in the Garvey Games, a local inter-family sports contest. The family all get assigned a country at random. Hilariously, the whites get the Federated States of Micronesia. Look at Big Show working for the Fed. Sports events are dished out to the family, except to Mandy, who is rubbish at sports, so she's given the role of team manager. They're facing off against the Ortega family, the Robert family, and primarily the ultra-competitive Erickson family. You know, the ones that made the phones. The matriarch of the Ericksons, Cassie, has a weird love-hate thing going on with. They make little digs at each other through smiles. It's like watching all the girls I went to uni with. We meet the school mascot, Manny the Manatee here. This is the mascot that Big Show slugged in episode 3. So that's a nice bit of world building, isn't it? Meanwhile, Mandy is invited to join a club featuring the non-participating family members, where she finds her people. They're eating vegan charcuterie. They're listening to Terry Gross interviews. They're having a lovely time. I actually Googled Terry Gross. She's a journalist who hosts interview show Fresh Air. She spoke to pretty much anyone who was anyone. And as soon as I earmarked her website to listen to several of the interviews, I realized that if I was to do one of those BuzzFeed articles about which character from the Big Show are you, I'd probably be Mandy. We also find out there's a wave runner up for grabs for whoever can keep their hand on said wave runner for the longest. It's a bit like Touch the Truck, that Dale Winton show from the 90s. Big Show tries his big hand at this one, and he and Mr. Erickson from the competitive family have a lovely conversation about their mutual love of the musical Wicked. This is inspired by the fact that the Big Show is drinking from a Wicked water bottle. It's a water bottle of the musical Wicked, not a water bottle that is Wicked. You get it. They're getting on really well, but pretend to be competitive when their wives turn up to be catty with each other. They agree to take their hands off the wave runner at the same time and share it. But when they do so, it's revealed that hiding behind them and playing the Touch the Wave Runner game the whole time was Mr. Iglesias from the sitcom Mr. Iglesias. What are you doing here? Gabe is delighted. He's just won a wave runner. Show and Erickson are gutted. That's all that Fluffy does. In further proof that her storylines are the best, JJ is revealed to be running a betting racket, gambling sweets during the Garvey Games, and throws a hula hoop competition that she is in after placing a bet against herself before it started. From here, we cue a montage of the Whites and the Ericksons trading wins in the basketball, the backwards office chair race, the sumo wrestling, a bunch of other weird things, and it all comes down to a sports relay with eggs. They've got to get an egg to the finish line. However, they need the entire family to compete, including rubbish at sports Mandy, who is pulled away from her game of historical tragedies Pictionary with her new mates to join in the forced family fun. It comes down, of course, to Mandy in the tricycle race, who gives it her all, spurred on by her new nerd friends, and she wins! Mrs. Erickson snaps on Cassie at this point, and Cassie throws the egg at her. Mandy vomits from the physical exertion. It's a wild 30 seconds. They end up being disqualified to the Whites for unsportsmanlike conduct, and Lola encourages stepmommy Dearest to be honest with Karen about how she really feels about her, and they end up taking great pleasure in no longer becoming friends. They both hated each other. They were just keeping up appearances, and they finally confess to that in a really sweet, unusual moment. Something that Big Show and Corey Erickson are going to ignore by still going to see musicals together. The show ends 1 year later with the family not getting the federal states of Micronesia in that weird country deciding thing of the Garvey Games, but rather the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. Oh, what a circumstance they find themselves in. We sprinted through 133 cans of canned laughter there. Some giggles from the frenemy ship of Cassie and Mrs. Erickson from me. Nothing hearty on the laugh front, I'll be honest. Oh, and zero wrestling references. Got sumo wrestling, but now WWE flavoured for all 28 minutes. I imagine that the pie-in-the-sky hopes of the writers would be to eventually move away from doing wrestling stuff in the Big Show show. And this was a little something to maybe test the waters of the whites living completely outside the WWE universe. Having said that, The Big Show shared his hopes for Season 2 in an interview with Denise Salcedo, and it included a reappearance by Mark Henry and a cameo by Stone Cold Steve Austin, something that Show states the Rattlesnake verbally agreed to, presumably after 15 beers, which hints that we wouldn't have been completely short of sports entertainment shenanigans in that second season. But we'll never know either way. After the initial 8 were released, before the Christmas episode and before the crossover episode were released, Deadline reported that Netflix cancelled The Big Show show. So what we've got on Netflix now is all we're ever going to get. It'll just kind of float through the streaming platform servers like a ghost ship, floating on by on a Netflix carousel, several clicks down the bottom, somewhere past One Day at a Time, Family Reunion, and Dad Stop Embarrassing Me. As you scroll through 25 minutes of mindless searching to find something new to watch before you just decide to watch Downton Abbey for the 18th time. If you do that for long enough, you may hear the mournful crackle of canned laughter as Mandy says something really nerdy or Big Show falls through a banister. This has been quite the adventure to go on. I came into this with open arms, yet eyes rolling. On the surface, it's very much a paint-by-numbers situation, comedy, overly sanitized and sometimes incredibly unfunny. At the start especially, it feels like it's trying really hard to win you over. By the end, once I got to know the characters, I'm not sure if it's just the fact that my mind's a bit fuzzy from the canned laughter onslaught, but I actually found the heart of the show by the end. Those last 2 episodes in particular, not the crossover and the Christmas one, they're coincidentally lighter on canned laughter, and they're my favourites because everything seems to have a bit more room to breathe. It's like that one person in your friend group who, when you first meet them, is so desperate to win you over straight away that you're put off them. Once they relax into the circle, you enjoy their company more. I'd argue I'm quite guilty of being a bit like that and having been a bit like that in the past. Maybe that's why I relate. The Big Show show broke me. It broke my preconception of what it was. I'm actually quite sad that we won't get a second series, believe it or not, because we were just entering that comfortable bit in the relationship. The whole series, with the pace of the last 2 episodes in season 1, not the Christmas special and not that crossover one, that would have actually been kind of sort of okay. Not 130 laughs an episode, okay, but okay nonetheless. It wouldn't have been the worst thing. Having said that, I am keen to go and watch something else now. Stay safe. Love you. Bye.